Hey, I'm Dr. Matt Deaton, please call me Matt, and welcome to Philosophy 2020, Self and Values, the Fall 2014 edition. This semester we're going to read 3 books. We're going to read A Dialogue on Personal Identity and Immortality by by John Perry. We're also going to read The Little Philosophy book by Robert Solomon. And we're going to read Justice, What's the Right Thing to Do by Harvard University professor Michael Sandel. If you've never taken a philosophy class before, the way I always describe it to new folks is that philosophy is the reason-based attempt to answer life's big, non-empirical questions. Now, before you can understand what a big non-empirical question is, let me tell you what a small empirical question is. Empirical questions can be directly tested in the world. So, for example, how many rocking horses are on Matt's front porch? We don't have to speculate about that. We can test it. We can go down here to the edge or to the end of my front porch here in lovely Von Orr, Tennessee, and we can see that there are 1, 2, 3 rocking horses on my front porch. If you don't know how tall I am, if you don't know how many satellites are circling the Earth, if you don't know what's the chemical composition of plastic, these are all things we can directly test and figure out. Those are empirical questions. Non-empirical questions aren't directly testable in this way. A non-empirical question would include, what constitutes a good life? What does it mean to know something? A question that probably has some empirical aspects but also some non-empirical aspects might be, does God exist, and how can we know for sure one way or the other? Ethical questions are non-empirical. What does it mean to be a good person? Is abortion morally permissible ever? If so, under what conditions? If not, why not? If so, why so? So these are the sorts of questions that philosophers attempt to answer. We're going to tackle a lot of these questions in this very semester. The first book on personal identity and immortality, it's a conversation that includes several interesting characters. The main one is a dying philosophy professor. And the dying philosophy professor asks her friends to reassure her that her identity can survive bodily death. She's like, look, I'm not so sure about this. I'd like to have some reassurance. Would you guys please convince me that it's the case that my identity could survive bodily death? And before they can entertain the question of whether or not it could survive bodily death, as you'll see, they need to figure out, what does it even mean to have an identity? What are the necessary and sufficient components of an identity? I suspect it's the case that you've lived your entire life up until this point right now without giving too much thought to what it means to be you and what it means for you to have an identity. Well, this class is going to invite you to think about that really hard. And I suspect whatever answer you have initially, this book is going to challenge. We're going to think through that in a fun way. The second book, The Little Philosophy book by Robert Solomon, has many different components in it. It has some philosophical history, some history of philosophy, has a bit in there on theism and God, nature, and spirituality. That's the title of chapter 3, in fact. Has questions in there about what it means to know something. That's the subdiscipline of philosophy called epistemology. Has a section on free will versus determinism. That's a very interesting section to see whether or not, or to think about whether or not we actually are free in our choices, whether we even have choices, whether choice is an illusion, and how we can know one way or the other. And I suspect when I'm saying this, you probably already have an idea of what you think right now. But I suspect it's also the case that once you read the reasons for and against thinking that we're free or determined, you're going to be able to question that again and think through it in an intelligent way. And that's the point of the class, to be able to think through these cool, non-empirical questions in an intelligent, deep way. And the last book we're going to read, Justice, What's the Right Thing to Do by Michael Sandel. This is my favorite book in the class. And it's my favorite because it deals with my specialty, which is political philosophy and applied ethics. I did my graduate work at the University of Tennessee. I taught there as a graduate teaching associate and also as a lecturer after I graduated. I've taught for Carson Newman, Pellissippi State, Walter State for, 4 or 5 years now. I've taught for South College, Lee University. Taught a lot of different places. And I've done mainly introductory classes and ethics classes, but also political philosophy classes, both writing concentration and oral concentration classes where folks would give speeches and such. And so I'm best versed, I suppose, when it comes to that particular book. But I'm also, every philosopher knows how to do the introductory stuff, which we'll find in the Little Philosophy book. And the Personal Identity book is exceptionally interesting as well. As you go through the course, I'm going to post some lectures to the course website. And these lectures will be corresponding to the chapters that I'm going to assign. You're going to see that it's the case that the lectures are recorded in Maryland. That's where I lived for 2.5 years, from 2012 up until just this past June. I'm from Vonore, which is where I am right now, but my family moved up to D.C. or the D.C. area for 2.5 years. Took a job with the Department of Veterans Affairs. I still work for Veterans Affairs, but I just do it now from home and also with some travel back up to D.C. So if I'm talking about being a Tennessean trapped in Maryland in the lectures, that's no longer true. It just happens to be the case that I recorded that, I guess, 3 semesters ago now. Perhaps it was the fall of 2013. Yeah, I guess when it was. So, thank you so much for signing up for the class. If you have any questions about anything at any time, I really am at your disposal. This isn't my day job. This is something I do on the side for fun, and they certainly don't pay a whole lot, so I'm doing this mainly for kicks. And I get more out of the course to the extent that I can help you get more out of the course. And so if you find the readings to be difficult, if you find a question to be especially interesting, if you want to learn more about a particular question, if you have some questions that diverge from the course material but they're somewhat related and you'd like to discuss it with a disinterested observer, I'm happy to play all those roles. I'd love to engage with you on these cool issues and other related issues. My personal email address is matt@mattdeaton.com. I'll post that on the website. You can also reach me through the eLearn email interface, through the eLearn interface. But I'm not going to check that account quite as often as I will the matt@mattdeaton.com account. The Walter State email, I hardly ever check that, so either use eLearn or matt@mattdeaton.com. Thanks again so much for being a part of this. I hope you enjoy the course. I'm going to do my best to make it enjoyable for you. And in any case, I hope you're having a great fall and your other projects, both professional and academically and personally, are going really well.